Okay, you guys ready? Hello everyone, my name is Chris. I'm here with my hetero life mate, Mr.
Russ.
And we are Comic Cave Podcast, and we have two special guests with us. Gentlemen, please introduce yourselves.
Mark Bernal, Lesser Known Comics.
Adrian Morales here, representing Literati Press.
Thank you guys so much for joining us here at Comicpalooza 2022. I know you guys are not from Houston. Where are you guys from? Where are you guys hail from?
Originally from California, living in Washington, D.C. now.
Well, I'm originally from Mexico, and I met all the guys that I work with in Oklahoma, but I am living in Houston at the moment.
Nice. Oh, you're from, okay, well. If you guys follow the podcast, which you should, Comic Cave Podcast, go subscribe, like, and comment. We've done interviews separately with these gentlemen, and now we brought them together because they have their own companies that they want to shout out. So, gentlemen, please, starting with Lesser Known Comics.
Do an elevator pitch real quick, each of you.
So, I don't know how you guys spent quarantine, but I accidentally started a comic book company. My wife gave me permission to make a comic book, and it got a little bit away from me. And she comes into the office one day, and she's like, "There's 14 people on this conference call. What happened?" I was like, "Hey, it could be worse. It could be worse." So, but it's been amazing making indie comic books. I've learned a lot. It's a crazy range of emotions, but generally I can't say enough amazing things about the indie comic scene.
All right, so my elevator pitch is I started out with kind of a crazy idea, and then I contacted a couple of buddies of mine in Oklahoma City that were in the scene, writers and artists, just general artists. And then the guys were like, "This is awesome, we really like this idea, and it's going to fit well with our repertoire of other books that we want to start publishing as a publishing company and distributor." And so that's how it kind of got started there.
So, guys, now that we know a little bit about your background, how do you publish a comic? 3 easy steps, go. Nothing?
I can tell you ways to not do it, that's for sure. That's an issue, yeah. If you want a short answer, yeah.
So, what are, getting serious into it, what are some of the initial steps? So say somebody has the idea for a comic, how do they even go about? What are some of the roles that they need to go into it? What are some of the first steps to take to go on your way to publishing a comic?
The big thing I think that you got to start with is the people that you surround yourself with. Making comics is a crazy undertaking. I thought it would be easier than a novel or something like that. It's once you have to align illustration, with inking and lettering and coloring and all that stuff, maybe different people that are doing different roles, plus designers, people that help you with social media, run websites and things like that. Get your crew right, And it's not necessarily people who know everything, but it's people who can say what they don't know, right? And not take that as an obstacle, my big thing I always say is I don't care if somebody makes a mistake. If you're working for me and you make a mistake, and you say, "Hey, I messed that up." I'm thank God we figured out what the problem was so we can fix it, right? Finger pointing doesn't do anything. So finding people who have empathy towards each other, take responsibility for their thing, don't have that inflated ego, can kind of say "Hey, I want to do this thing, but I don't really know all the answers." Okay, we can figure it out together. So that's what I would say is start with the people.
I want to second that because, as I mentioned, when I first walked into that bookshop, the people there were really amazing, very intelligent and hardworking. So, completely agree with the people. The other thing I do want to mention is that those people that you're going to be working with, each one has a strong point. They have their talents, and you have your talent as well. You need to be able to identify that and work on that. Make sure you contribute that. You give that to the project. And I'm not an artist, and I'm not anything particularly artistic. I'm pretty much the opposite in my professional life. But working with artists has been really, really different than from my day-to-day. And one of the things that I did notice is I bring stuff to the table that I didn't know that I had. So in terms of scheduling, planning, finance, that kind of stuff, I could bring some of those talents. And I just didn't know that. So it doesn't matter what your skill set is or what your background is. if you're passionate about it, passionate about your project, you have something to contribute to the team. It's about the mix and what each person can bring. And really, as what Mark said, I didn't know what I was getting into. I mean, you start out with one little step. I just stepped into that bookshop. I told them my idea, and then I thought it was kind of weird that they were listening to me for like 2 hours, and then they were like, "Okay, we want to make a book out of it."
So,
like,
if I may, you started off with We Promised Utopia, and then you took it to Literati. Was it literally just an idea that you had that you went into the bookshop with, or did you already have some kind of draft written up? Like how?
I had nothing. I had a concept.
That's ballsy, man. You was ready.
I had a world creation kind of like concept, and we had kind of like Robert Pullman, which is my friend from back in Oklahoma. We took a long road trip, and we just kind of like started, just talking about random stuff, and we came up with this idea. But we had no characters, we had no real timeline. We just were really interested in like the science side of things, like the geology, the economics of it, the geopolitics of what kind of a world would give rise to some of these things. And that's what we really focused on. And then we brought it to the artists and the creators, and they gave it life in different ways. They gave it characters, they gave life through art and colors. It was just amazing to see how each person added layers to this story.
So Mark, you're actually kind of on the flip side of that. You have other people trying to approach you to get their comics out there. What are there like guidelines, or are there like check marks that you have that you're looking for that you're like, okay, I can actually invest something into this?
Yeah, so that's the big thing. I actually was just speaking to a creator at the tail end of the last panel, and number one piece of advice, I give to anybody who's making a submission or they're trying to get in the scene, the amount of persistence it takes, right? Because if someone says, hey, can you publish this book, or would you be interested in publishing this book? The answer is going to be most likely at this time, no, but it has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with we have a schedule planned out, or someone else has a release right now, or that's not like the style that we're like pushing or whatever at the particular time. Or maybe, but if a creator tells me, well, let me know if you want to work with me, like the amount of shiny objects I'm going to be distracted by, like I'm never going to talk to that person again. I literally told you, like, DM us again, like a week later, like, hey, can we make a comic now? Hey, can we make a comic now? Because one day I'm going to be like, man, we're looking for a book that does, and oh, look, this person's back. And like, it tells me a lot about persistence, it tells me a lot about that kind of stuff. The other thing, one of the first pieces of the checklist I looked at too is, we all know social media is important, but it's also like, if you go on Instagram, it says who everybody else that you're friends with. I'm going to see a bunch of indie creators in your, this person also follows, also, whatever. And that tells me that you're working like with a network of people that, those are the people who are going to help you, edit your scripts and, tell you, when your art sucks, and encourage you when you like don't want to do work that day, so if I see that somebody doesn't follow any other indie creators, it's like, that's going to put them at a huge disadvantage.
Right. So it's as much not necessarily what's on the paper all the time, but also like their social network and like the work and the ethic and the drive behind it.
Yeah, it's raining crazy good art right now. So like, and crazy good stories. So like this is what makes you a cut above the rest. If you got something special, you got to also come and be part of the community and participate in it.
So focusing on the book itself, I'm sure there's no like one way to do this, right? What is typically though kind of like the first thing? Is it having your approach to it where you just have like the concept of the whole world, or is it actually already having like character designs and then building on that? Like what do you see the process for most people to actually develop their own? Either both of you.
Yeah, I think the process is you as a creator, you have a certain role and a certain position within the project. It's either going to be more on the technical side, it's going to be more on the art, writing, whatever it is, that's your strong point, or maybe it mixes, it kind of like overlaps a bit. Knowing that role and developing it as much as we can, for example, giving a concrete example, if you are a writer or the artist, having that sketch, having those preliminary sketches of what the characters are going to look like, or certain scenarios, and like ours is based in the future and then like far future. So having some of those landscapes, kind of like brainstormed out, that's super important. It really gives guidance to artists. Again, like I'm totally not on the art side, so my sketches were stick figures and many, like literally. So, but they liked it. I mean, they liked the effort that I put into it. It was the first time I was ever forced in a position where I had to think about panels, and I was trying to like draw just stick figure panels, and they really appreciated that. But it really helped guide some of those initial concepts of art. First thing, do as much work, as much pre-work as you can. And I want to hit a few points. I made a few notes that I really wanted to share with the audience. Super important is a printing cadence. So you are going to lose readership. It's just a matter of how quickly you're going to lose some of that readership, and you don't want to hit that inflection point where your book is no longer profitable, or like, you know, you can keep publishing. And if you are printing every month, you are going to lose less readership. We were printing bi-monthly. That's one of the things that we've learned throughout the first year. So what does that mean? That means that for our next seasons, we are kind of redefining our scheduling. So scheduling is super important, but it also means that you're gonna need more funding up front, especially if you're not doing your own art or your own writing. And I'll get a little bit into finances a little bit later, but scheduling, cadence of printing, monthly printing, that's how you're going to retain readership. Like seriously, I really want to stress that a lot.
What are some of the logistical red tapes that you guys had to go through to get your comic published and ready for print?
The logistical red tape, it's the main platform. So, right now, I think the experience that I see when I talk to indie publishers, I first got into it, like, where do you make all your money? It's like Kickstarter is like number one, like to a degree of like 80 to 90% of what like they pull in initially from a book, and then they use that Kickstarter to print all the books, and then the excess books from that Kickstarter campaign, that's what they bring to cons, and that's what they, those typically with the folks that I run with, that's how, even over brick and mortar stores, putting stuff on Amazon, digital, like it's, so that means I know way too much about paper weight than I ever thought I ever would. Matte, glossy, 12 point, holochrome, this so once again, like the people that you partner with, our printer that we use, they're based out of Michigan, Comics Wellspring, they're fantastic, right? And that's like having people that will help you with the logistics part of that, right? Because like I know when I call them, there's going to be one person that I know is going to answer the phone because they're like a family owned. So like even though maybe I'm paying a little bit more than if I was going with a bigger printer, like that's their job to figure out the logistics of like printing and this kind of thing. Like, I'm just the dumb guy who's bringing you art and I need you to make it pretty on a book. Like, anytime you can outsource those logistics hurdles, but yeah, printing, and then also learning social media and how to work those algorithms, that's the big logistics.
So if I can add to that, like some of my red tape from like the social media perspective, I'm like zero social media presence. So that was like a big liability for my book, from my side as a creator. So yes, having social media presence is super, super important.
Do you have, I'm sorry, continue, but do you have to have that social media presence before you even go to Kickstarter?
I think that you do, yes. I think you do, because you have that pull that you're going to be asking people, maybe even if they won't contribute, like $5, $10, but as long as they click on it and they like it, or if they contribute one single dollar, that's already pushing or playing with the algorithm the way that the algorithm needs to be played with, so it can be pushed to the top. So it doesn't matter if you have, whatever, if 100 people, if you can tell 100 people, like, look, I'll buy you like lunch or something, I'll buy you a drink or whatever. Just go in there, donate $1, push the algorithm. I mean, that's the world we live in, But one thing I want to talk about with red tape was distribution. depending on who you choose to go with for nationwide distribution, you can have different kinds of red tapes. Some of that red tape comes with benefits as well. One of the benefits of going with a nationwide distributor is that you will be paid like pretty much like immediately. Like these are the orders, here's your money, send the books over. But some of that red tape that goes in with that is all the pre-work to just get put in like diamond previews kind of thing. That takes a little bit of work or takes some work to do that. And I know that let's say we have a lot of introverts within our community, or some introverts, extroverts that, you feel super comfortable, talking to people that are alike. But once you start building those relationships with the distributors, it's super important to keep those relationships kind of like fresh and healthy, because those are the guys that are going to be able to help you out. Like if the books are missing or if they're late to the bookshops, like a lot of the customers at the bookshops, they don't care if it's late. They just want their book, right? They might not get it just because it's late, and that's not your fault. It might be a distributor fault.
Got you. Reeling it back a little bit. So you guys are talking about there's different facets to making comics, right? So you have the artist, and then even that breaks down to even more. You have your pencil, and you have your colorist, right? And even like your lettering. How do you guys find the missing pieces to your team in order to get the comic to that where it's ready to be put out there?
So I would say, I'm learning outsource in terms of like, talk about that team, those people that you trust, right? So the inker on this one, Franco, he's like, I will work the colorist, like I have a colorist, these are the only colorists that are allowed to touch my inks, and I'm like, okay, I only have to talk to Franco, I need the pages, but he'll work out the logistics, and they do cool creative things where they actually barter with each other when you might need something for a colorist, but I don't have to, because if you get into that as like the creator or the publisher or something like that, like that's not your food fight. You don't want to spend time like, what do they say, not my monkey, not my circus. Yeah, like, so and trust in them, to innovate on their own. Same guy, Franco, we use the Marvel method type thing where I say, hey, on page 6, a bunch of henchmen are gonna enter the room, and I need them all to die by this scene, so you can take as many pages as you want to kill them off as creatively as you want. We all know, what is like happening in the room in the scene, like have fun. And, because I do writing and, as well as publishing, as a writer, like, it's like, what he's going to dream up with his, like, crazy, imagination is going to be, there's no way, you can ever really describe something like that, Let visual artists do the thing that they're good at, like, to what you were saying, Adrian, like, he's a visual artist. Why am I going to describe to him what, like, an explosion is going to look like, So, they're going to bring their thing, and once you can empower other people to do the thing that they're good at, and the thing that gives them energy, right? Because you want to do the thing that you wake up in the morning excited to do. Like, you're signing things out that people don't want to do, then it'll show.
I think I totally agree with the outsourcing. Outsource when you need to. There's a balance between the outsourcing and the insourcing. And if you're going to do insourcing within the people that are working the project, it's really important to set the expectations for what those people are going to be responsible for. If the people are going to be responsible for like lettering, if the same artist is going to be responsible for lettering, that needs to be clear from the very beginning. So that having that very clear communication and expectations from each individual member, that's super, super important from the beginning. Don't let it become a surprise to them. Like, hey, look, I got your panels, it look great. Like, can you add like the story, the lettering? And then they're like, well, they start feeling kind of uncomfortable. And it's like, talk about these things from the very beginning. And again, like just starting, kind of like your first indie comic, like don't worry too much about making it like, oh, it's got to look exactly like whatever Marvel, DC, Boom, or Dark Horse, whatever it looks like. No, like just do your best, get your stuff out there, have the frequency. When you outsource, there will be kind of like a tipping point, especially if you start publishing quite a few titles, and that's when we decided to bring in a printing press. Really look at once you have a volume, I can't remember what's our volume that we had, but once you bring in the printing press, then you really reduce your costs on printing. Every dollar that we spent on a comic book, if art is outsourced and printing is outsourced, then it's 45 cents goes to art and 45 cents goes to printing out of every dollar. So those are two very important numbers to keep in mind. If you can control those numbers and minimize those numbers, you have a higher chance of success, of being a financial success, which allows you to continue doing it. I think every book, as long as it's passionate, is going to be a success to its own creator, but you also need that financial reality in there.
Can I add, so with the choosing what to outsource and that whatnot too, is on that initial communication, what it was you had brought up about like agreeing on things at the beginning, the outset of things. We are all human. Talking to somebody and communicating what failure looks like ahead of time, right? So we've had a couple graphic novels that we released, like that the people came in, they're amazing books and stuff like that, and as a publisher, I want to do right by the book, right? I want to do one Digital Lizards of Doom, he was coming from a different publisher, they had a negative experience, and he said, I'm so glad to be with a professional publisher, and I was like, hey, I reserve the right to screw something up that's super simple at some point. Like, it will happen, you will mess something up. And you set those expectations ahead of time so that you can say, hey, when we encounter something that we didn't anticipate, like, how are we going to react to that, right? Not finger pointing type of thing. Once again, like to, solve problems together. The Tank McGregor book, the same thing. I had the same conversation with Ray about that of like, because he was coming in, he was like, hey, it seems like you got everything figured out. He was like, I feel like it's a dumpster fire every day, and you're just putting out one dumpster fire another, so maybe, set those expectations ahead of time.
So when you guys still kind of stuck on the outsourcing topic, I'm sorry, but I'm intrigued by this. Like, where do you find these people? Is it literally just Googling? Are there platforms of social groups where these creators are at? Is it just coming to cons? Like, how do you find them?
For the outsourcing, from our perspective, we outsource a lot of the printing and, of course, distribution. Outsourcing of art and writing was not really an issue for us because we had kind of like Oklahoma has a tight community with the artists, and so at some point they kind of like work in similar or kind of like under the same house for a while. Not that they're being paid by the same house for everything, but they're all really involved, and the art community is kind of tight there. So the outsourcing of the art, it didn't really feel like we were outsourcing it because they worked with us so often.
Felt like you were bringing them in more?
Yeah, a little bit more like, yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. It was, the outsourcing for us was much more on the printing side, and I'll give you a story. Like the first batch of books that we printed for We Promise Utopia, we printed a small batch, like 100 books or so, that were gonna go out to the first supporters. And those came back and there was like text missing in some of the bubbles, in some of the text bubbles. And so just going into the software and troubleshooting it, like, why was this, why did this happen? And it ended up being like something, I think it was like a shading in a bubble that took out text and final printing, I don't know. But going to Mark's point, like, there are gonna be mess ups, and you gotta, learn how to really deal with them as they come.
On that note, we'd like to open up the floor for some future comic publishers and writers out there. If you guys have any questions, come on up or shout them out. Let us know if you have any questions. But until that time, what are some of the curveballs that you guys encountered while developing your comics? Like, oh man, where you thought your comic was about to get published and you were right there, but then something knocks you off or something happens. Like you mentioned, missing text in the bubbles. Like, what are some of the other curveballs that you guys were
The mess-ups.
Yes, mess-ups.
I'll give you a fortunate curveball, and I'll give you some unfortunate curveball. So, fortunate curveball is I worked with an illustrator. Actually, we were talking about on this panel, the last panel, with Haley. We had a creator, Charlie Ragnarok, did this, comic cover for me. I was like, just wanted this comic that was like black, white, hot pink, and I was like, yes, like this is awesome. And she was like, oh, like I got this book, like would you be interested in publishing this? And I was like, this is, so it's like, so I worked at the mall, like it's a story about a vampire cult taking over a mall, and I was like, okay, well you have me hooked, like, and then I read it and I was like, this is way better than the stuff I'm writing that you're illustrating, so you need to stop illustrating for me. That's a happy curveball, because like we had story arcs planned for this, but you know, we're doing this book now, you know. So that's a happy curveball, you know. Less happy curveballs, you know, when something gives you a bad feeling working with somebody, like, listen to your gut. You know, that's the one I'm gonna say, you know, and don't let, once you have your circle, you see somebody that's not treating people in your circle like the right way, that person's gotta go, you know. First and foremost, you know, if they're not, we say this a lot in our team meetings, it's like, I don't care how well your book's doing individually, if you're not helping the person to the left and right of you, like, I'm not interested in you being, like, you know, that's fine, you go publish somewhere else, like, there's nothing against you, like, personally, but you're not gonna thrive here. And I think generally in the indie comic scene, you're not gonna thrive if you're not looking out for the people to the left and right of you. It's everything from like, hey, I want to do some variant cover art for you, or to like, hey, we're working the same con, text me if you need to take a pee break, you know, and need someone to cover your booth. Like, that kind of humanity goes a long way.
So, yeah, from my end, I want to cover a few curveballs as well. I don't think I have a positive one, but maybe one comes out somewhere. So, first thing, if you are gonna get an artist, art cost will surprise you. Second thing, print cost will surprise you. So those are two very, very big curveballs. Be prepared for those numbers, and be prepared to take a look at what you need to do, and how you need to move those books, and how you need to get funding to get this thing off the ground. Yeah. So those are two very big curveballs that are gonna come at you really fast and very early, and they're pretty big. The other thing, once we got everything rolling, we had a calling campaign. So I came up with the idea. I said, like, how about we just go online? We just go look at a bunch of bookstores all around the country. I can start compiling phone numbers. Awesome. I did it super quick. I compiled I think it was 200 bookstores, and I sent it to the team. And then the team was like, this is awesome. We need you to call them. I can't do that. I need to go. I have a 9-to-5 job. I can't do this. So, but then we split up the work. I started calling a few, and I told them, I'll take care of the ones in New York. That's fine. You'll be surprised by how aggressive the guys picking up the phone in comic books in New York City will be, and some of them are going to be very enthusiastic. So it's kind of like you got a low, and then you got a high, and a low, and a lot of lows, and so. You'll get curveballs when you're doing your pre-work on your pre-sales kind of thing, just trying to get, you know, interest in your book. Another curveball that we had, I was writing as you were talking, our distributor lost a whole bunch of books for our second issue. That really affected our sales afterwards, because we had to go back to print, we had to go get the books, we had to file an insurance claim for the books that were lost. We don't get the full amount recovered. You get a residual. So going through that experience was also pretty painful. And those are curveballs that stay, you know, for the duration of the project. And always be open to critical feedback. Always be open to receive it and to let some of it go. You gotta let go of some of the feedback. But some of the feedback that we got was really good, and we all agreed. For example, the publishing cadence. I know I've emphasized it a lot, but super important.
You made me think of one thing too, especially with calling stores and where your book's going to be successful. So Charlie's actually moving from Baltimore to Seattle, and I was like, that's fantastic news. And she was like, why? I said, because if this book sits in a bookstore in Seattle, listed for $20, people will buy it without batting an eye. I'm in Virginia. comic book stores there won't hold it because it's not the same shape as this. Like different places in the country and at different points of time, they're interested in certain books. Right now, the Great Lakes region, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, like I go to every comic book store there, and they're expanding to the retail space next door, right? One state down, they're not doing that. They're contracting or moving everything online. So, I was afraid when you said, "Oh, I call it only in New York," right? New York, because you can have just vastly different receptions. So if it doesn't go well for you in one state, there's 49 others and a few territories. So diversify.
Sorry,
That's a great. Oh,
come on, man! I got like 4 questions. While I do have these 4 questions, seriously, guys, if you have any questions, you feel free to step on down. You guys can use this mic. We'll pass it down to you. Just heads up. But most of what we've been talking about as of right now has been printing physical books, right? What about online? What about digital copies? Do you guys have any thoughts or recommendations on that?
We do have some of our titles like on Comixology. Getting the titles on Comixology takes a little bit of extra work. For example, Comixology will require the artist to, and this is an extra step that I have no idea what goes into it. I just know that they need to go in and kind of like select panels and say, this is number 1. Then from number 1, you go to number 2. This is the ones that you're going to be zooming in. So I know it's extra work. How much extra work? I don't know how much extra work that is. Impact on sales and that we've had from Comixology, I got to be honest, from our personal experience, it wasn't that great. Print has been much better for us. However, I think we need to readjust our strategies and again be flexible with your online strategies on how you're distributing. Perhaps that's not the right platform for us.
Yeah, I'll say with print. So I'll get on my soapbox for a second. So comic books is a unique medium that you can do certain things that you can't do on any other medium. So let's use like a scary story, for example. If the characters are creeping down the hall and they gotta enter this room where the monster might be, that needs to happen on the bottom half of this page, so that when they open the door, you turn the door, when the monster jumps out, it needs to be like with the page turn. It's a thing that happens only in comic books, right? So I don't have the comic book in front of me, but we have one where someone gets handed a map. So when they go to open the map, you turn the page and you're holding the map, right? It's a full 2-page spread. Like, understand what a comic is and how it feels in your hand and what you can do that's unique on that, medium that you can't do anywhere else. And it almost is liberating to be like, oh, I just need a plate of this piece of paper's strength, right? Like, it's almost like, then you can start following like a formula or whatever, and then you can start hitting a rhythm, because now, it's just something a lot of that's lost in digital because everyone's got the tablet, it's only 1 page at a time and stuff like that, so
I have a question. Is there a story or maybe a drawing that you come across and people pitch to you that you didn't have the time to do it then, but it stuck with you since you met that person? Is there something like the most interesting one that you've heard so far?
So maybe I can answer from our side a little bit quickly. Well, maybe get another example, but over in Oklahoma we have this thing that's called Literati Presents, and we publish this free, pretty much, magazine at the bookstore, and it has like local distribution. So stories that just we can't get into print like nationwide and get that whole circulation. We start working with the creators and help them kind of start formulating those ideas and getting used to the medium and putting them in that Literati Presents, and then just giving them that outlet, and then they can take that physical copy, put it in the portfolio, kind of like show it around, or perhaps it comes around to us again when we do have that capacity.
Chris, did you have something? Otherwise, I got 3.
well, yeah, no, because you said earlier that if it doesn't work in one state, there are 50 others. Do you have plans to distribute outside of America, like to other countries and regions and stuff like that?
Yeah, Kickstarter, we discovered that like shipping overseas, like shipping costs a lot. You know, so we did unique things like we have special like international variant covers that are only available to international like buyers, so that like it's like a thank you. Like I know shipping costs a grip, so like here's something cool that's only for you.
That's cool.
That's really good. Yeah.
On the lines of, I got like a three-part question. I'm trying to figure out how to like break it down for you guys. But so you're talking about marketing. Like, how are there like tools that you guys use to figure out what market your book is going to do well in? How do you reach out to the stores to like figure that out? Is it just trial and error?
I think from our perspective, compiling that list, it was like a nationwide list, you know, Chris. And each one is going to have that different reception, like maybe a little bit negative in some parts, but really positive in others. So we already had kind of like a preconceived notion of where our book could be doing well, and that really helped out. Doing that market research, yeah. And I mean, there's a bunch of companies that could do that, you know, they just call and survey. But to be honest, like bookstores, they want to hear from the creators, especially if you're an indie guy.
Mm-hmm. So is there something that you guys have to have, like a press release or something like that, to be able to get it into the stores, or like what kind of like back-end stuff do you need prepped?
There's a, like for example, if you distribute through Diamond, we primarily distribute through Diamond. So there is a process that Diamond requires you to have, like, let's say a small abstract of what your book is going to be about, or what the issue is going to be about, and the cover art as well. And there's timelines for these things, and you need to have a UPC code for all these things, like ahead of time. Once you fill all those requirements, and they'll go ahead and put it in their website. That's where the bookshops will go in and start reading about the books that are upcoming. And then at the same time that hit the website, that's when we started calling the bookshops and telling them, you can search it by this code, and Diamond will give you a code, or whatever distributor you're using, they'll give you a code for your book. And then when you talk to them on the phone, you can tell them, this is the book code, please look it up, see if it's something that your bookshop might be interested in. And then once that's on the website, then it'll come out in print, you know, like about a month later. And obviously you try to call again to the bookshops that were interested. Yeah. It's a lot of calling.
Gotcha, Mark, you have anything to add?
No, I'm just so glad Adrian's here, because yeah, you know, that's one of the things. Like when you start, like, you know, it's so important to have like a network. So we specialize lesser known comics, you know, just like the name. So a lot of first time creators and stuff like that. We structure our contracts so that they can leave, you know, very easily. They can retain as much of their IP as possible. We also do like two-way licensing agreement, which means that if Lesser Known Comics owns IP, like owns these characters, but you've drawn them once, if you want to make art prints and go to a show and sell those, like, we don't need a cut of that. Like, I wasn't going to make those anyway, right? So that's really good for the artists, that, you know, that they can, you know, get some value added. But at a certain point, you know, I enjoy that incubation stage. This is where you know, we're like the Oakland A's. Like, you come here and start your rookie career, you know, and then when you outgrow this company, you go somewhere else, like fly away, baby bird. So, you know, maybe they'll go to Literati Press, you know, and that would be great, you know, for somebody who knows how to do UPCs and distribution. And like, I got that cool spreadsheet with all those comic book shops.
So, actually, on the notes of like spreadsheets, this is a very convoluted process. I almost feel a little bit more overwhelmed now than when we started this whole thing. How do you guys keep track in like order of what needs to happen next? And how do you like create liability on each other for that?
Let me tell you something that artists do not like. They don't like Gantt charts. And Gantt charts are a pain. I don't like Gantt charts, and I gotta do it, you know, for my normal work. I don't like Gantt charts, and I gotta do it anyways. But Gantt charts, for anybody that's not familiar, that's pretty much how you're going to schedule your time and how you schedule deadlines. And so if you think about it on a piece of paper, you're going to have something that starts at time 0, and then let's say this is roughs, and you say you're going to have 5 days, and so this little thing keeps moving forward. At this point, it's supposed to stop, and then we're going to start with I don't know, whatever, like penciling. I think it comes after roughs. Yeah. So you gotta have these things, and then you gotta have that communication with the team as a whole, and without pointing at somebody and saying, hey, we're running behind because of you. No, you gotta just keep everybody in line, keep everybody communicated on what's the progress of whatever stage you're on. Again, I don't particularly like Gantt charts myself, but I create them and I try to keep people in line. So I guess I'm the one with the stick. Yeah. You gotta have somebody with a stick, and that person's gonna be kind of like, man, from
We are starting to run a little bit low on time, which sucks because I have so many more questions. If I can ask kind of one more question, I guess the nail in the coffin. Just a minute ago, so you said there's sketches and then penciling, right? Like, what is kind of the general flow of a comic creation?
Yeah, so for me, what I like to do is, I'll put together like a general concept. I might put a Pinterest board together, like send that to you. These kind of things, like the vibe I'm trying to get from this. They're gonna give you back, maybe some concept art. You're working with an artist and it's the first time, like they may be a good artist doing sequential art, comic by panels. That's a whole different skill set. So there are plenty of people, and I work with one right now that's like, she's an amazing artist, and she's like making that transition to learn how to do comics, So they draw some, how these, they call them thumbnails, the general layout of the page. Then you pencil it, then you ink it, so the ink is like, these are where the lines are final, I'm gonna go, color. And then what so many people skimp on, letters. Nothing will ruin good art faster than bad lettering. If do not use Comic Sans, do not use, there's so, and if you don't know a good letter, and that's the part of the network, right? Ask people and stuff like that. Because there are so many little parts of all these processes, right? Also the final design, so yeah, that would be another one, right? Because just because they illustrate doesn't mean they know how to, put the logo up and do cool title words and stuff like that. So any of those go wrong, you won't even know what's wrong with the comic book. It's just kind of like cookies that came out of the oven that taste weird. You don't know, you're like, oh, you don't know what ingredient is missing, you just know it kind of sucks,
Gotcha.
Well, that being said, thank you gentlemen so much for joining us here on the panel at 2022 Comicpalooza. How can your audience find you guys?
I have very bad social media presence, and they make fun of me when I say LinkedIn, but that's probably the most active one. But we also have Literati Press, which is kind of like the big press, and Charles is super active there. We have other people out there, so mostly Literati Press online. That's the logo over there.
Yeah. Awesome. Instagram, Twitter, at Lesser Known Comics, or lesserknowncomics.com. And then, there's a bunch of bookmarks, stickers, comics. If it's sitting on those back chairs, it's probably just come take it and come say hi. That's another good way of getting a hold of us, is I'll just hang out there. So if you want to talk, we help so many people that aren't even publishing with us, because it's indie comics. If you want to make indie comics, you got to be about supporting indie comics.
Yeah, and reach out to me. If somebody has any questions, reach out to us. I'm sure we're more than willing to help out with any questions.
Thank you guys so much. We are Comic Cave Podcast.
Please like, subscribe, and comment. Until next time, everyone, my name is Chris, along with my headline, Mr.
Russ.
And you are?
Adrian.
Mark.
Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you.